Ever since I became a car and a driving enthusiast, I've been dreaming to learn how to drive a manual transmission car. To roll through my own gears, be more engaged with the car, and be in total control of it. But let's be real, manual cars becoming more rare and rare these days, and owning one is not very practical for many people. I opened my windows so you can hear this great exhaust from this little Fiat 500 Abarth. It is much more convenient to have an automatic car, especially if you are sharing your car with someone, with your family or your significant other. So for many people, having a manual car means they have to have two cars. And due to the high cost of living and so many other financial goals we want to hit, such as getting your own place, saving for retirement and traveling, it is so much harder to justify financially to have a manual transmission car. And here's when the question comes. How do I actually learn how to drive a manual transmission car while not owning one? So in this video, I'm going to cover 3 topics. Why do we want to learn how to drive a manual transmission car? How to get more seating time, and how to actually practice driving a manual car, especially if you're just starting out, to become better and less fearful faster. Why do we want to drive a manual car? First of all, it's just plain fun. Right now, I'm sitting in a very fun car, Fiat 500 Abarth. It has 160 horsepower, which is very good for this type of car, which only weighs about 2,500 pounds. So it actually moves very fast. So why is it fun driving it with a stick? And the reason is that you are in control of every single gear, and you are so involved in the whole process, you'll have to use all 4 of your limbs. Your left hand and your right hand are trying to steer the car. Your right hand as well is responsible for changing the gears. Your left leg is responsible for controlling the clutch, and your right leg is responsible for braking and accelerating. And it is hard to get it right at first, just like any other musical instrument. And that is the fun of it, because you want to become better, you want to become smoother with it. And here is the great example why is it fun. I'm in second gear, I push my foot down. Just look how fun it is. You cannot do it in an automatic transmission unless it's a dual clutch. Because if you're driving in automatic transmission, driving just becomes braking, accelerating, and steering. But when you are driving a manual car, you are responsible for making gear changes as well. So it adds this additional layer of engagement. In some cases, it could be safer to drive a manual car. And let me explain. Since you are more involved in the driving experience, you are more likely to be focused. So your brain and your body is always busy, and that means you are less likely to be distracted and cause an accident. Driving a manual becomes a very rare skill nowadays. Less and less people know how to drive a manual with each year, and according to statistics, only 9% of all cars in Canada today are manual cars, and only 1% of new cars that are sold today come with the manual transmission. I'm 25, and all of my friends don't know how to drive a manual transmission car. And I think it is always cool to possess some kind of a rare skill. And the last but not least reason to learn how to drive stick is that it gives you more options when it comes to choosing different cars. So many enthusiast-oriented cars nowadays, such as Subaru BRZ, Toyota GR86, Civic Si, GR Corolla, they all provide such a great manual driving experience. And if you don't know how to drive a manual, you're just missing out on these options. And let's say you want to travel to Europe or Southeast Asia and rent a car there. Many, and sometimes even half of rental cars come with a manual transmission. And in Europe, it is usually cheaper to rent a manual transmission car as well. So you're missing out on this option as well. So how to actually get more manual car sitting time and find these opportunities to learn how to drive a manual transmission? And I have 4 options for you. First one is free, and it all depends on your situation. If you have a family member, friend, or someone close you know that can give you an opportunity and let you drive their car, which comes with a stick, and actually teach you. My dad taught me how to drive a manual transmission car in his friend's car. But if you don't have this option, there are more ways to learn how to drive a manual transmission. The second method is finding a driving school which provide manual transmission car lessons. And this method is not free, but it is the most safe option if you're nervous about driving on your own. But the great news is that whether if you choose method 1 or method 2, you open up the method 3. And the method 3 is actually what I'm doing right now. I rented this car on Turo. So if you went through method 1 or 2, you'll be able to rent some of these cars on Turo and practice yourself. I don't recommend to rent a car on Turo if you don't know how to drive a manual transmission car, because I don't think it's ethical and respectful to the person that is renting out the car. So don't bother renting a car on Turo if you haven't gone through method 1 or method 2. And the advantage of renting someone else's car is that you are usually in control of which car you want to drive. So a couple of months ago, I was driving the Toyota GR86, and you are seeing the footage right now. And this time I chose this Fiat 500 Abarth. And the last method I want to recommend for you is basically buying the car you want with a manual transmission and learning on it. I saw so many stories online on forums where people mentioned that they just basically bought their car from a private person or from a dealership, and they just asked the dealership or the person who was selling the car to actually just teach them the basics so that they can actually drive the car home. And once they get their car home, they just spend the next month or two learning themselves how to drive a manual. So now we are actually ready to discuss some practice exercises you can perform to become a better manual car driver faster. And just a quick disclaimer, I'm still learning myself. This is practically my 4th day of trying to teach myself how to drive a manual transmission car. So these are some of the exercises that I use myself at the moment to become a better driver. So let's actually first start with the basics. You want to find a place which is kind of empty. You see there's not many cars around me, and there's lots of spare road for me as well to experiment with. And it is just so much easier to learn in an environment like this rather than going into the city and drive among other cars, because you'll just be more nervous and you'll probably panic. And if you're watching this video, I kind of assume that you know the very basics of a manual transmission. You know that we have a clutch pedal, a third pedal, and we have the shifter. So hopefully you know the theory of how to drive a manual transmission car. And if you don't, you can find great videos on YouTube where they explain the basics. But in this video, I just want to show you some exercises to learn faster. So the first exercise is very simple. We just want to make sure we know how to get the car going in the first gear. And to do this, again, just find kind of an empty place like this. So what do? We push our clutch pedal all the way down, go into the first gear, and we just lift the clutch pedal very slowly, very smoothly until we can feel and see that the car is moving. This will help us to understand where is the clutch biting point, and once we are going, just make sure to find a place where it is safe to stop. And to stop, we just press the clutch pedal all the way down and we just hit the brakes. Then we go back into neutral and you can release the clutch pedal. So the first exercise is basically making sure you know how to get the car going in the first gear, and do it as many times as you need until you are very confident that you can get the car going every time. As soon as you get more comfortable with starting your car in the first gear, we want to practice switching the gears from first to second and so on. And it's basically all the same when it comes to switching from gear to gear. We just put our clutch pedal all the way down, release it at the bite point slowly, and you are in the next gear. When you are starting out, I recommend upshifting when you're above 2500 or 3000 RPM. So let's say now we are going above 3000 RPM, I go from second into third. So try to find a place like this with empty roads, not much traffic around you. Usually it's better to come out on the weekend, closer to the evening, like Right now it's 6 p.m. on the Saturday. So if you can find a place like this, it'll be so much easier to actually learn how to switch the gears from first, second, third to fourth, and so on. So this exercise will help you to feel more comfortable actually upshifting and actually going and experiencing the car at a more reasonable speed in which you will actually drive in the city or on the highway. It is much harder to actually start in the first gear than actually going through the gears. So once you will master the first exercise, the second exercise would not take too long. The hardest thing is just basically to figure out the RPMs and when to upshift. So as a rule of thumb, just try to upshift at around 2500, 3000 RPM and you will be fine. And let me just give you a glimpse of what fun you can have when you will learn these basics. It is such a great sensation when you roll through your own gears in a spirited fashion. So once you know how to get going, and you know how to shift through the gears, and you kind of feel more comfortable with it, the next step is to actually become more smooth. And from my experience, you should start by controlling smoothly your gas pedal and your clutch pedal. For example, let's say we're starting out, and sorry, I don't have a foot cam on me right now. It will be in my other future videos. So let's say you are sitting on an e-brake in neutral in your car. You want to first practice your gas input. So try to use your gas pedal and keep the RPMs between 1000 and 2000 RPM. Like this. So once you are proficient with this, it'll be much easier to make smoother starts. And you'll have to combine it with slowly and smoothly releasing your clutch pedal. All right, let me demonstrate. Right foot on the brake, release the e-brake, clutch in, first gear. Keep the RPMs between 1000 and 2000 and slowly release the clutch pedal. So in short, just try to practice as much as possible making smooth starts and smooth gear changes. And it all comes to your right and left foot balance. Don't try to be as fast as possible and don't try to give too much gas. You'll probably just burn the clutch since the clutch doesn't like to be engaged above 2000 RPM, especially for a long time. And it is so much easier to be smooth when you are in this 1500 to 2000 RPM range. So the next vital lesson that you will need to practice a lot before actually going into the city and drive is starting on a hill. Nice. So I found a place where if I'm in neutral and I remove my foot from the brake pedal, we start rolling backwards. So it is a perfect circumstance to show you how to do a hill start. And to do this, first put your e-brake up, remove the foot from your brake pedal, clutch in, first gear, and since your e-brake is holding you, you are able to release your foot from the brake pedal and put it onto the gas pedal while playing with your clutch as well. Don't forget, you have to hold the e-brake with your thumb down. Now we are acting just as we would like to start in our first gear, and as soon as we feel the car lean forward, we release the e-brake and we're off. It will feel weird for you at first, but after doing it maybe 5 or 10 times, it will become natural, and next time you're on a hill and someone is behind you, you will not be as nervous. And let's discuss the last important practice exercise you need to do, which is parking, whether it's parallel parking or reverse parking, because we need to practice how to actually move your car very, very slowly in the tight parking situations. So let's say we want to parallel park behind this red car. If you know how to parallel park in a normal automatic car, you follow the same procedure. We go into reverse, and remember, reverse is different in every single manual car. And to move your car very slowly backwards, you do the same action as you would do when you start your car in the first gear, but you don't release the clutch fully. You kind of engage it, and as soon as you feel like the car is moving at a reasonable speed, you disengage it again by pushing the clutch pedal in. And then you just modulate it with your brake, like in a normal car. And to move forward, you do the same. first gear. You release the clutch pedal slowly. You can feel the car moving. You don't engage the clutch fully. You are slipping the clutch to get it going, but then as soon as you feel like it's at reasonable speed, you push the clutch back in. And now we have successfully parked. So you want to actually practice this first in a safe environment like this, so then when it's in a busier seating environment and lots of car behind you and in front of you, you will not be as nervous and again panic and probably cause some bad things to happen, like an accident or something worse. And don't worry, it's going to be hard at first, trust me. And even though it's my third or fourth day of learning and applying these practicing exercises I showed you, you see how better I got. It will be discouraging. Your first day will be the most discouraging. It was for me at least. I stalled the car probably 15 or 20 times. I couldn't just find this biting point. But as soon as you get it, it becomes so much easier, so much more enjoyable. And then if you add these 4 practicing exercises I showed you, you'll become much more confident very fast, I promise. It is so hard for your brain to synchronize all of your motions because every single limb of yours is doing a different thing. Your left hand is steering, your right hand is playing with the gear shift, your left foot is controlling the clutch, and your right hand is braking and accelerating. It's actually 4 very, very different things. But again, with practice, it is so enjoyable when you get it right. It feels like you've learned something hard, and learning hard things is one of the most rewarding experiences ever. And if you know how to drive stick, you can experience so many cool cars out there, like this 500 Abarth. Maybe if you have a chance in your life to drive a Porsche, a manual Porsche is one of the greatest driving experiences ever. And I just feel like if you want this kind of experience, you want to be ready for it, right? So you want to learn how to drive a manual transmission in advance. As a manual transmission learner myself, I highly encourage all of you to do this. So I hope at least one of you have learned something new, maybe got encouraged to drive a manual car. And as always, stay safe out there, keep enjoying the drive, and I'll see you in the next one.